Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Bibbidi Bobbidi Books. My name is Ellie and this is going to be my quarterly reading wrap up. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the first 3 months of this year. I'm going to be talking stats, I'm going to be talking numbers, and I'm going to be ranking all the books that I read as well. But before we get into this video, I just wanted to take a moment to ask you, how are you? I hope that you're all well. I hope you've all been reading some fantastic books in 2024. Please do drop me a comment down below because I'd love to have a chat with you and a catch up and yeah, just see how you've all been. I have had a pretty slow start to the reading year. I feel like reading hasn't been my top priority this year. I've had quite a lot of other things on my plate and that's okay. I'm trying not to beat myself up about it. I feel like sometimes it's quite difficult if you watch a lot of booktube or if you are a booktuber not to compare yourself to other people, because I feel like so many people read so many books and that is fantastic, but also that's just not me. That's not where I am at the moment, and it's okay as well for your hobbies to ebb and flow. Sometimes you might be really into something, sometimes maybe not so much, and other things take priority, and that's just life. So yeah, I'm trying to not beat myself up about the fact that I haven't read hundreds of books, and I don't think you should either. So if you haven't read loads and loads of books, that's absolutely fine. I just hope that you've been enjoying what you have been reading. But yeah, let's start off with some general stats for the books that I've read in the first 2 months of this year. So I have read a total of 9 books in January, February and March, and that breaks down to about 3,946 pages, which actually isn't as bad as I thought, considering I haven't read as much as I normally do, and because there's been a few weeks where I haven't read anything at all, and actually if we break that down, that works out to about 43 pages per day, which I actually think is quite good. So I'm actually okay with that. In terms of the genres that I've read, the most that I've read have been fantasy, because that's my favourite genre, so that's not surprising at all. So I read 5 fantasy books, 2 horror books and 2 sci-fi. Again, those are 3 of my favourite genres, so I feel like that's not surprising at all that those are all the books that I've read in the first 3 months of this year. Hopefully next wrap up I will have a bit more variety, next quarterly wrap up. I do normally read more genres than that, but apparently I've been prioritising my favourite genres in this first quarter of the year, and that's okay. Let's have a look at the authors. So I have read a pretty even mix of male to female authors. I've read 5 books that were written by females and 4 books that were written by male authors, so that's pretty good. I like to make sure that there is a balance there, so I'm quite pleased with that. In terms of the target audience, I've read 6 adult books and 3 young adult books. I feel like that is pretty reflective of my reading tastes. I feel like as I grow, I am falling out of love a little bit with young adult fiction. I did used to really enjoy YA fantasy books, and I feel like there's not been many that I've read recently that I've particularly enjoyed. I think I'm starting to find the tropes and just the themes in those kinds of books just don't really resonate with me anymore, and my preference is definitely much more towards adult fiction. That being said, I do sometimes find some young adult gems, so I'm not going to not read young adult books anymore, but I just feel like I'm going to be prioritising books that are aimed at an adult audience because I just feel like that works best for me at the moment. I do actually sometimes enjoy reading a children's book. I quite like the middle grade genre. I feel like there's something so whimsical and magical and comforting about reading some middle grade stories, so I may pick up 1 or 2 of those. Obviously I haven't so far this year, but it's not uncommon for me to sometimes choose a middle grade book, so if you have any recommendations for me, please do let me know down in the comments section. I feel like sometimes books like that are good to break up your reading, especially if you read quite a lot of chunky adult books like I do. I don't know, sometimes it's quite nice to just have a nice light middle grade to break things up a little bit. But yeah, 6 adult books, 3 young adult books. That's pretty standard, I would say, for me. In terms of the format of the books that I've read, so I read 6 books physically and I've read 3 books via audio. And again, I feel like that's quite usual for me. I definitely prefer to read books physically. I find it really difficult actually to enjoy books via audio. I feel like my mind just wanders and I need the discipline of looking at physical words on a page to like quiet my brain so that I can actually take in the information, whereas I feel like when I'm listening to things via audio, my mind will just wander and I will not focus on the words, and then, you know, several chapters will have gone by and I'll be like, oh, I haven't actually been paying any attention and I don't know what's going on. So I do really struggle with audiobooks, and I also struggle to find audio narrators that work for me. I feel like I'm quite picky and I don't know, I find it hard to find someone that I really enjoy listening to. And then in terms of where I sourced these books from, 6 of the books I actually owned prior to the start of 2024, and just 2 books that I read in the first 3 months were new books. And I'm quite pleased with that because I'm trying to prioritise my physical TBR, because, you know, it's not good to keep buying new books because then you end up just never getting to your actual owned TBR, especially because I am planning to move at some point in the near future, so I really need to work on downsizing and prioritising the books that I already have on my shelves. And I feel like I've been quite good recently. I've not bought loads and loads of new books, which has been hard for me because buying books is a hobby of mine and I'm like a magpie when I see like new shiny books, especially if they've got a gorgeous cover. I'm just like, oh, I need to have it. But I've been trying to be really good and I have actually been better than I have been previously. So I haven't bought tons of books recently, and I have been enjoying reading some of the books that are on my shelves because obviously they're books that I want to read. So yeah, it's been good. I've been feeling like I'm making progress through my owned TBR, and I hope to keep that up throughout the whole of this year, but we shall see. Anyway, those were my sort of general stats for the first quarter of the year. I hope that was interesting to you. And then for the second half of this video, I'm going to be ranking all of the books that I read because I thought that might be quite fun to do. So I'm going to be using a tier ranking system online, which I haven't used before. So I really hope that this works. Let's see. Okay, so this is the tier ranking system that I have made. So I've got tiers down the side. So the top tier is my God tier. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. It's books that I just love, new favourites, ones that I can't stop thinking about, the ones that are gonna, you know, I'm going to want to reread at some point in the future, that I might want to annotate, the ones that just live rent-free in my brain. Those are the ones that would go in God tier. Then I've got highly recommend. So again, I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, but basically books that I would really, really recommend for everybody to pick up and, you know, can't stop talking about and recommending to friends. The next tier is Funtime. So books that I've enjoyed but wouldn't necessarily be super enthusiastic about recommending, you know, ones that just were a nice experience at the time, but perhaps not ones that I am like obsessed with, if that makes sense. The next tier is meh, so books that just haven't really had a lasting impression on me, books that I might have read and then if you asked me about it a week later I probably would have forgotten loads of the details, ones that just haven't stuck with me, haven't really you know, worked that well for me. And then the final tier is not for me, so books that I haven't enjoyed. So yeah, we're going to be using this tier system. I'm going to try and use this at all of my quarterly wrap-ups because I really want to make this a thing, because I think it's quite good actually to reflect on your reading and to have these little videos to sort of track what kinds of books I'm reading and how I'm doing and stuff. So yeah, hopefully this tier system works well, but let's crack on with it. So the first book that I read in 2024 was The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. The first book in an adult fantasy series, and it has a really really cool setting, this one, because it's set in like a Venice-like city where you travel by boat through canals and things. The city is connected by a series of rivers and canals, so it's a really cool aesthetic, and I did really enjoy this one. I'm not sure if it would quite make it onto the God's tier, so I feel like it's going to go on highly recommend, just because I do feel like it was a little bit slow at times. The pacing was a little bit off. There was definitely a lot of description as well. I actually had to switch up from reading this physically to reading this on audio, because I did find it a little bit of a slog to get through initially. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in highly recommend. But if you are looking for a really atmospheric fantasy series, it's got kind of like you're following like a group of criminals as they're pulling off these heists and swindles. It's a really like fun world with lots of description to sink your teeth into, then yeah, I would highly recommend that one. The next book that I read was Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. I just love this series. I definitely highly recommend this one. This is so much... Do you know what? Actually, I think I'm going to put it up here, because Becky Chambers just has a wonderful writing style, and all of her books I end up thinking about, you know, after the effect, and I can't stop thinking about this book, and it just feels wrong not to put it in God's tier. So Becky Chambers is definitely a favourite author for me. She writes wonderful science fiction books. This is one of the books in her Wayfarers series, which is a sci-fi that has quite a hopeful outlook, which I really enjoy about her books. They're very character driven. This particular book is about a colony of humans who live out in space. So the idea is, in the far-flung future, humans had to leave the planet Earth because it was dying. Some of them set up colony on Mars, and some others formed this space fleet and travelled through space. And so their new home became these spacecrafts and this big colony of spaceships that have been travelling through space for years and years, for generations, until they found other intelligent life, and then they decided to sort of settle down and are just sort of orbiting this sun, but they are still living on these spaceships. And it's like a real look into the people that live there, lots of themes of community, of identity, and it's just... what can I say? I just love her writing and I love her world. So yeah, if you haven't checked out Becky Chambers, please do. The next book that I've got on here is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This is easy. This is 100% a God tier book for me. This is one that I am definitely going to go back and reread. I definitely want to annotate it because the writing is fantastic. This is a science fiction, but it's written in a really lyrical and poetic way, which I just love. It's a story about a group of pilgrims who are travelling to this planet called Hyperion because there is time tombs on this planet which are opening, and they are trying to get there to discover the secrets of this time tomb. And it's very much almost like a character study. It reads like a series of short stories because each chapter is following a different person, a different perspective, and they're all very different, and you find out about why they are wanting to go onto this pilgrimage, why they are interested in this planet of Hyperion, and it's so interesting. They all have very different feelings. Like, for example, there's a poet on there and his chapter is very poetic, of course. You've got a soldier on there with a more sort of military style sort of setting, and then you've got a father who is talking about looking after their child, and you've got, you know, one chapter is following someone who is an investigator, and their chapter reads like a noir. So it has like lots of different flavours within this book, and it's just so beautifully done. And the world is fascinating, finding out about this sci-fi setting and the planet of Hyperion, and the planet of Hyperion itself has these time tombs, but it also has this creature called the Shrike, which is very like terrifying type creature. I think it's described as part god, part killing machine, and yeah, it's just so much fun. So yeah, I just love this one, and I can't wait to get to the next book. and yeah, I just loved it. The next book is The Ghost Bride by Yangzi Chu. So I'm going to put this in Funtime. I actually, looking on Goodreads, I actually rated this one pretty highly, which I'm quite surprised about because now I can't really remember it all that well. I think part of the problem is that after I read this book, I watched the first couple of episodes of the Netflix adaptation because I'd finished this book, I'd enjoyed it, and I saw that there was an adaptation, and I was like, I'm gonna give it a go. You know, I'm not ready to let go of this book and these characters just yet. Let's watch the series. And it was so different and just not in a good way. Like, I really did not enjoy the first few episodes that I watched of The Ghost Bride on Netflix, and I just feel like now I'm mixing up the two in my head. So when I'm thinking of the book, I'm thinking of the adaptation that I didn't enjoy, so I think that's why I'm not like putting that up higher. But yeah, I'm gonna pop this one in Funtime. This is a young adult fantasy, and it follows a woman who becomes a ghost bride. So she is basically from a once wealthy family that have lost a lot of their wealth and are struggling financially, and she gets offered the opportunity to marry into a more wealthy family, but the problem is that they want her to marry their recently deceased son, so she would become a ghost bride, which of course she is not happy about, and she ends up going and she explores the spirit realm and uncovers secrets about this family that she's supposed to be marrying into and about her own family, and it's very much a story of her coming of age, her finding herself, and also her trying to save her family. And it was really beautiful, actually, the book. I do remember now, it's starting to come back to me. The setting was really creative, and it had quite a nice whimsical sort of feel about it, but it also had some kind of creepy elements as well, because it talks a lot about the Chinese afterlife and the spirit realm and things like that, and there was some sort of creatures and ghosts and things in there as well. So I did have a fun time with that one. The next one is Child Thief by Brom, which I'm straight away going to put in Not For Me. I'll link my wrap up down below if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this one, but this is a Peter Pan retelling, a very, very dark modern Peter Pan retelling, and it just didn't work for me. I buddy read this one with my friend Christine over at Secrets Reads, and we both just didn't get on with it, unfortunately. So yeah, if you want to hear more of my thoughts, I'll link that video down below. Next up we have Bookshops and Bone Dust. I really enjoyed this one by Travis Baldry. This is a cozy fantasy. It's the prequel to Legends and Lattes, which I'm sure you've probably heard of because it took BookTube by storm when it first came out. But yeah, I just loved this one. It was so quaint, so cozy, just such a comfort read. And in this story we're following Viv, who gets an injury when she's battling these necromancers. She injures her leg, and because of that she can't fight, and so she has to rest up in this sleepy seaside town. And at first she's not very happy about that because she wants to get in on the action, but she starts to make friends, and she goes and she finds this bookshop and becomes friends with the bookshop owner, who is this little mouse person, and they have this lovely friendship that they form, and she discovers a love of reading and a love of books, and it's just charming. I will say that it is slice of life, it is low stakes, but you do also have some threat. So there is that looming threat of the necromancer, so there is enough to keep your attention. I feel like it more so than in Legends and Lattes. So if you read Legends and Lattes and you thought that was a little bit too like slow, a bit too boring maybe, then you might get on with this one a little bit better, because I do feel like there is a little bit more tension in this book with this background threat of the necromancer. But yeah, it's just a charming story about friendships and about having a summer fling and about finding a new hobby and love of books, and It's just lovely. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. It also has a really cool character in it who is a skeleton who is animated by sprinkling bone dust on him and he lives in a satchel, so his name is Satchel, and he's just such a funny character. So yeah, lots of D&D vibes, and it's just charming and wonderful. So yeah, I love that one. If you're looking for something cozy, definitely pick that one up. Next up we have When the Ghosts Call Us Home. This one was written by Katja de Becerra, and I highly recommend this one. This was fantastic if you're looking for something to get you out of a reading slump. This is a young adult horror thriller, and it follows a teenager who starred in a horror movie when she was 12 years old. Her sister actually did this horror movie. They filmed it at their old house, which is this mansion by the seaside, and this movie that her sister made became a cult hit. It got a huge following, it was really successful, and part of the reason why it was successful was because our main character's reactions were so realistic. And the reason why they were so realistic is because her sister put her in these dangerous situations to film her real live reactions. Anyway, fast forward several years, and the sister who made the movie goes missing, and our main character is trying to find out what happened to her, and she is following these clues that lead her back to this manor house, and she decides to film this documentary about what it was like starring in this show when she was younger, because it's an excuse for her to have access to this house. And when she's there, she is uncovering clues about what happened to her sister, why she is missing, but also about her past as well, and what actually went down when they were filming this horror movie. It's so much fun. It's a lot of it's really sort of gripping, on the edge of your seat. It's a page turner, kept me hooked. I ate this one up super quickly. I will say it is pretty unrealistic. You do have to suspend your disbelief a lot with this one, and there are some kind of YA elements in it that I didn't love. Like, there was a bit of a romance in there that I felt like it didn't need to be in there, but if you're looking for a fun time, I highly recommend this one. Then we've got A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I'm going to put this one in the fun time tier. This is a book that I loved like years ago. This is a book that got me back into reading, and the second book in this series, A Court of Mist and Fury, is like one of my faves. And it's been interesting going back and rereading these ones. I actually reread this one with my husband, which was quite funny, and we filmed a vlog, so I'll link that down below. Yeah, it's one of those where I kind of wish that I hadn't gone back and revisited it, because I had so much fun when I read it the first time, and now that I go back, I'm a bit like, ooh. It is fun, but it is quite tropey. And I do feel like my tastes have changed quite a lot over the years, so I'm not sure I would highly recommend this one. You've probably already read it because it's been out for a long time and it has a huge following. But it's fun. I had a fun time being back with our characters and being back in that world, and it was such like it's a comfort thing for me, because I just enjoy the setting in the world and the characters, so it was just nice to be back. Although it was a little bit cringe reading the first book in this series, because I do feel like they get better from this one. But yeah, I'm sure you've probably heard of that one before. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, first in the series. And then the final book was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I think I'm going to put this one in highly... It's between God tier and highly recommend, but I think I'm going to put it in highly recommend. Just because... I don't... Oh, maybe I should put it in God tier. Oh, what do I do? No, I'm going to put it in God tier because it is one that I'm going to keep thinking about for a long time, and it was quite unique. It's not like a book that I've read before. This is a fantasy book, first in a series, an adult series, has sci-fi elements to it. It's set on a planet called Earth, where there is this big continent called the Stillness, and it's ravaged by these cataclysmic events that happen periodically throughout history. And so the people who live on this continent have had to sort of try and survive this really volatile environment, and the fact that each time one of these cataclysmic events happens, it destroys their planet and they have to rebuild from the rubble up again. So it's quite a apocalyptic style setting, quite grim, quite gritty. But what's very unique about it is the fact that one of the point of views, one of the perspectives in here is written in second person, which is just something that you don't find that often. And it was quite interesting seeing why that was used by the author, and it's just such a unique world and setting and not like anything that I've read before. So I think for that reason I'm going to put it in that God tier, just because yeah, it was just such a unique thing, and I just loved finding out about the world and finding out about the characters, and it's definitely something that I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. There was quite a lot of really quite disturbing scenes in there as well that are just going to stick with me. So yeah, I think that is where I'm going to leave it. So those were the books that I read in the first quarter of this year. I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about them. I hope that you're all doing well, and yeah, I guess that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you did like it, subscribe if you want to see some more from me, and I guess I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!